Welcome to the 4th Annual Guild of Music Supervisors Conference.
We're here today to talk about the economics of music supervision, basically different ways that music supervisors get paid. We're going to go over some survey results from the Guild of Music Supervisors members who did respond to our survey. We would love next year to have a much bigger sample. So this will be an annual thing that we speak about and talk about so that people can understand how music supervisors get paid. All right, so there are actually going to be 4 different types of payment that we'll have for music supervisors. There'll be salaries, people who work full-time in a corporate setting as a music supervisor. We'll have freelance TV, freelance film, and then we'll have mixed media, and we'll explain to you guys what that means. So let's just get started. I am Carolyn Richardson. I am founder and CEO of Music for Scenes, a music supervision and talent consultation agency. Oh, well, didn't know I had fans. I've worked at CBS in music supervision, but I've also worked at Sony Music and Live Nation in promos and marketing. And now I primarily do short films, web series, and small digital campaigns, which is kind of a new entree into the business. A lot of people aren't making money that way in music supervision, so I wanted to see how this goes because I'm kind of a newbie in the way that I get paid as well. Let's get it started. I'm just gonna have you guys tell us how, what you do, but I do want to introduce you. To my far right is Manish Raval.
Yeah.
And next to Manish is Heather Guibert. Woo. Rudy Chung. And Jojo Villanueva. Guys, please introduce yourselves. Let the people know what you do.
I'm Manish, and I'm a freelance music supervisor. My company's Aperture Music. I have a partner, Tom Wolf. We've been together for almost 20 years this year. And we do music editorial as well, in addition to music supervision. And we'll talk about that today.
Heather, good to see you all. I'm a freelance music supervisor. I work predominantly in film and television, but also do some work in ads and trailers. I was at a company for 9 years called Neophonic, and then went independent almost 5 years ago. So I've seen a little bit of different sides.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rudy Chung. I'm a music supervisor at Hit the Ground Running. We've been music supervising film and TV for about 15 or 16 years. I'm also a partner at an artist sync agency called Pusher and a VR artist agency called Cloak, which is bringing artists and their music into virtual reality content.
Hey, I'm Jojo Villanueva. I'm Senior Vice President of Music Creative over at Sony Pictures Entertainment. And before that, I was a freelance music supervisor at a company called Format Entertainment. I was there for like roughly 15 years. And now I'm at Sony.
Great. So we have a good mix of freelance, corporate, and people who work in ads and trailers. And then there's me. So we're just going to jump into the numbers. Again, this sample was a small sample of Guild of Music Supervisors members. Across the 4 different areas, we had over 100 responses. So, some of the bigger named music supervisors are probably not, their numbers probably didn't fit into the sample. So I'll let you guys know this is the sample that responded to our survey. These are the numbers we have, okay? We're gonna start with corporate members. In the sample, the overall average salary from all respondents was $91,000. That's a good amount. They work about 50 hours per week. Most of it is no overtime, so it's salaried, obviously. And based on the amount of hours they work, the per hour rate is $35.83 per hour. We also asked in the survey how many years of experience people had. And so this is the breakout of the salaries when compared to the amount of experience. So you can see there's kind of a good spread of $30,000 or so as you move up in your years of experience. We had a really balanced sample in terms of female versus male, so that's not a question in this particular sample size. It was almost equal, so we wanted to point that out because generally in our industry, it's heavily male, but our sample was actually pretty balanced, so I want to make sure you guys know that. Woo, that's good news. Well, actually, let's break it up. Let's break it up, right? Let's talk about salaries. Jojo, do you want to talk about what the differences have been for you working in corporate versus when you were working as freelance?
Well, as a freelance music supervisor, we would get a gig and we would be on that show, the film project for, it would depend. It would be, if it's like animation, that would be 4 years. If it were like a live action, it would be about 1 to 2 years, depending, because there are levels of work in terms of on cameras, or if it's a film that just needed like a handful of songs that needed to be handled, right? So on those, I would make what I would make, and that would range from, because I would be working on stuff that were like independent films or like totally big budget films. So it would run the gamut. And so, and I had to sing for my supper. So every time I got those gigs, I would do a presentation, go to a meeting, do the song and dance for the director and the studio. And then they would decide whether or not they would, hire me. Being at a studio, I'm not paid per project. I just get a salary, and it's not uncommon to have a contract, and you have your contract for X amount, but you don't get to, you only work on, well, my deal is that I only work on stuff that is at Sony Pictures, so whatever they assign me to. And there are several divisions at Sony. So there's the big budget stuff, which is Columbia, and then there's the mid-budget stuff, which are TriStar and Screen Gems, and then there's the kind of the limited, if any, theatrical movies put out through Stage 6, and then there's Sony Pictures Animation. So when I'm at, the difference between what I did before and what I do now is there are projects that I would work on that don't have so many songs in it, and it's just a composer on it. So in terms of the workload, like it kind of it varies depending on what the project is. And so, for example, like I work on a lot of horror stuff, and that is just score. And so I just deal with the composer, the director, and the studio and try and kind of balance that. But then there are other things where I have a project that has a lot of songs on it, and we decide that we're going to put some money aside for that project for a music supervisor. So I'll work with a music supervisor on that one. And I guess it's cool because I came from the independent music supervision world, so I kind of know all the tricks and whatnot. And I can be like, don't you think you should be doing this? Or, I just kind of know that world a little more than someone who would have come up through the studio system only.
Good. Heather, you have flipped, right? So do you want to talk? Yeah, so you want to talk about moving into freelance from?
Yeah, I mean, I went from working in a company where I was a salaried employee and worked on various projects. Most of those projects were coming in through the company's contacts directly. Eventually started bringing some things on my own, and made the decision to go from the nice security blanket of a regular check every 2 weeks to getting really excited when your postal worker arrives and gives you your mail, because that means that you're getting maybe paid that day. Going from kind of the consistency of being at a company with that kind of structure to really having to do it all on your own, hustle for work, sing for your supper, get out there, and then once the job is in hand, then work your butt off to make sure that you keep it, and kind of having to see it through all the way to the end, and doing your invoicing and getting real excited when you send that invoice out, and then waiting and waiting and waiting. Every day you get real excited when the mail comes, and every now and then you get it and you run right to the bank to make the deposit so you can pay your bills.
Yes, that's what we'll say, yes. We're going to talk about freelance television fees because this is generally how people view music supervisors, the ones who have the TV shows and the episodes and all of that. So let's talk about those fees. Again, I want to continue to remind you, these are numbers from our membership who responded to the survey. So if you thought the fees were different, they are, but not this time. So these are per episode fees. We had the sample basically tell us how many episodes they had, what they were paid per episode, and then also give us insight about how long they actually worked on the show. So even though you may have seen 10 episodes week to week, the music supervisor probably came on months in advance to start on it and probably still has clearance stuff to do or paperwork to do or changes to make and confirmations of use months and months later. So we're also going to talk about how much time it takes technically per episode, which is that second number you see. So the per episode average is $3,908. There seemed to be a pretty good $4,000 number that a lot of people put in this section. So that's good. But when you consider the fact that some of these shows are taking 30 weeks, 34 weeks, 36 weeks to actually finish all the work for that season, you start to think, ooh, 2.96 weeks per episode, $3,900. If I have one show, I'm doing okay, but I might need 2 or 3 or 4 to get through the year. So that's why we have that number on there. And based on the 59.4 hours per episode, it's $65.79 per hour. So the average number of episodes, I think you guys have noticed, episodes are now going down. So a lot of people's bottom lines are being affected by the fact that there's now only 10 episodes where it used to be 16, sometimes 20. Things are shortening. They're starting to make sure that there are more shows for you to watch, but that means less bottom line for us, or if you're a freelance music supervisor, more singing to do. So about 12, but generally 10. And then work per week per episode is about 20 hours. But again, we spoke about how that varies depending on if you're in season or if you're finished shooting and those types of things. But the average number of weeks per season was 35.6 weeks. So if you can imagine, you're in season maybe only 10 to 12 weeks, but then you're working on that 3 times longer than it's actually airing. So that's a lot of time and energy to put into something that's not even airing anymore, and that you're probably not getting paid right away. Like, there's no every 2-week check when you're out of season, people. Okay. These numbers do not include the back-end consideration. The additional, this was an error, but it's fun that I got to add it. Did you have something to say, Jojo? No. Okay. This is an error, the additional, but that's what it feels like, that you have to have additional staff. Like, there was a clearance person, but now they have a bigger project, so they do things a lot slower, but you need that to be done before you can work on the next thing. So now you have an additional staff person to get. So I wanted to mention that because it was a happy mistake. On set time. People think that you want to come on set and like stand there and watch everything that happens, but you really don't. You just want to finish your work. And that time is not paid. And it also takes away from the time that you're doing your job, which is trying to clear the music and getting the assets and making sure everything is done. You can't sit with an editor if you're on set. Just saying. And then the last thing is revision fees. People's visions change when a creative industry. Generally, when people change their vision, they don't send us a new check. Some people have it built in, some clearance people have it built into their contracts, but music supervisors, by and large, when visions change, we don't get like double money for that episode because somebody changed their mind. So there's that. So let's talk about TV. Rudy has something to say, I can tell.
One observation of just looking at those numbers is that it doesn't also really reflect like how things have changed so drastically. Like average per episode of TV is obviously useful to know, but the way that those hours are being worked on are different. So if, network TV used to be 22 episodes a season and you had 3 shows, that's 66 episodes. That is very different than working on 66 episodes of 6 different shows. There's way more meetings. There's way more people to deal with. There's way more driving across town to spotting sessions and playbacks. Even though the number of episodes might be the same, and it's useful to know what that average is per episode, it's actually like we're having to work a lot harder for the same, I guess, amount of money. So not only do we need to work on more series because our seasons are much shorter, but it's also like it's different than it was when, well, at least for me personally, when I was working on a lot of network television shows that had gloriously long seasons that were, very long campaigns, but those it's not the same sort of intensity level as working on an 8-episode season of a Netflix show. Just because there's so much more start-stop, so much more meetings, more creative, more fires to put out. So, one thing that I've noticed personally, and I'm curious to know what your guys' experience has been as well, it's like this year alone, like I feel like we're working harder than, I'm working harder than I've ever have in the past with more shows, more films than I've ever worked on. But we kind of realized 3/4 of the way through the year that like if you compare it to what we've earned as as music supervisors over the past 15 years, it's not in our top 5 years. So, but we're working harder. So I think a lot of people in this room are probably feeling the same thing, where we're having to work harder for and more hours and more shows for the same amount of money or less amount of money.
Yeah, I almost feel like the numbers for television need to be split into 2 different types of, questions and answers. Whereas the network television model of 18 to 22 episodes is a very specific thing. It's always on a set schedule based on fall TV starts here, it ends here. And, it's a pretty safe schedule too. By the time you read the script or you receive the script, they're shooting it a week later. They're editing it the next week. It's going to air a week later. So you're usually like, there's a finite amount of time on a 22 episode season. Now, when you get into the newer platforms like Hulu and Netflix and the streaming platforms, and they are making 8-episode seasons, I'm working on this 8-episode season for the same amount of time that I am a 22-episode season. So these numbers drastically change when it comes to that. When it comes to how many hours am I working on one episode of this Netflix show as opposed to 1 hour on this ABC sitcom. That I think is like one of the biggest struggles in our industry right now, as far as trying to find a way to reconcile this, because the fees tend to be the same. I mean, you're getting paid per episode. It's rarely taken into consideration how much time we're spending on it. I think the thought is it's an episode of television, so it's X amount of weeks. But when you're working on a show and we don't know when it's coming out, you kind of are painting yourself into a corner. You're working until it's done.
There's also, people are saying this is the golden age of television. There's more TV being made now than ever before. That's just great. There's more opportunities out there, but it's also not as convenient to say because there's more TV being made, it's like way more lucrative to be a supervisor, because it's not really like scalable work or scalable hours. It's not as easy to say, oh, I can work on 24 television series this year because there's so many more shows being made. It doesn't work that way.
That's a really good point, Rudy. There's no start to finish. And any other thing, if you're selling soap or if you're selling even online courses, is a good way to think about it. We can't just say, oh, let's just put it out to everybody. We're only limited by what we can do, and each production, even if it's a 60-minute, no matter where it airs, could either have this horrible producer who has 5 million things going on and it's just hard to communicate with them, and they will literally mess up your bandwidth to go out and sing for more shows because you have to be committed to the project you're already tied to. So it makes it very hard for us to figure out, what can I take on? It's almost like, I know I need more work, but do I even have the time to take on this work? And the question is, I do, because I need more money.
To kind of add to that point, what Rudy mentioned with network series is it's a very structured pattern. You know when the season's going to start, you know when those seasons end, you understand what that timeline is like. And a lot of the new platforms that exist now, and cable TV really started that. Those things are being produced, are being aired, are being released at completely different timelines. It's so difficult to predict when the next season will begin, when the next call that you get will happen. So as you're sitting there trying to plan your finances for a year, you're like, well, I don't know. Apparently we're coming back for another season, but no.
This year or next.
This year, next year, how many episodes are we doing? Is it going up? Is it going down? Do we know? No, we don't. And you're just sitting around waiting. And even once you might start, those timelines are just getting pushed and pushed and pushed. Or, the beauty of the binge watch model as like an audience member who wants to watch all 10 episodes in one day is great. But when you're working on 10 episodes that are open and unlocked at the exact same time, it is insane. Or when you finally finish all the mixes on those episodes and you have to wait months before you can send out your confirms and actually be done with it so you can get paid.
Does everyone know what the process is of that? Like, so you want to explain more about what the confirm letters are? Like, it triggers, what happens is there are like these deliverables, right, that you have to provide to this, in my case, studio or to the network, and that triggers your payment. And so, like you were saying, like,
for example, the number up there, $3,900, if that's how much you're getting for one episode of television, you will get half of it when you start working on the episode. Sometimes. Really, sometimes. You don't. But theoretically, you get it when you start working on the episode. You get the second half, the completion, when you're completely finished, meaning you've sent all the paperwork off, it's aired, and you're hoping you get it then. So theoretically, for a network show, this is about 6 weeks lead time that you're waiting for a half of a $3,900 check, and then the second half. For a streaming platform show, you can be waiting 8 months for an $1,800 check.
And then simultaneously, like up there, it says you have your staff and your coordinators and you're paying rent, and it's like the cash flow, managing cash flow, and running a small business and not knowing when you're going to get paid can apply real pressure.
That aspect of music supervision and the economics of it all is really important, because before going into anything and before trying to get a television show or working on television shows, you need to step back and figure out, well, how much does it cost for me to run my business? We all have different ones. I have a company, there's 4 of us. And so unlike anytime I'm working on a project, everyone else in the room, other than maybe the composer, but everyone else in the room is an employee or a union employee of the project. They're set up in an office. Their machines are working on are all rented by the production. We're independent contractors. So I'm paying rent for my office. I'm paying health benefits for my employees. I'm paying for the internet. I'm paying all of this stuff. Yeah, so everything, the expenses. When someone says, "Hey, send me this song," and I don't have it, and it's going to take me a while to get it, I pay 99 cents to buy it, and I send it to them. So before even getting into these TV fees, I know X amount of dollars a month is going out, and I have to make that before I'm even in the green. And that's the real daunting thing about this when it comes to having to switch to an 8-episode season. So suddenly, 8 times 3,900 is a lot different than 8 times or 22 times 3,900. That's the big dilemma we're in right now. And it's unfortunately the hard part of it, where the economics don't work, is, well, let me just take on 3 more Netflix shows, or let me take on 4 more, streaming platform shows. Sorry to keep saying Netflix. It must be something.
We love you, Netflix.
Yeah. Streaming, because they were the first. But
love Amazon and Hulu too.
Yeah. But we struggle with this too, because we'll have to take on X amount of more projects, and then what we feel is we need more help to take on all these projects, but it's not really there with the money, and that's.
And then the show can get canceled.
And you never know if the show is going to come back or not.
Or there could be a writer's strike.
Yeah.
Or they could trim the episode order.
There you go. So a lot of contingencies with TV is basically what we're trying to say. Anything else about TV, guys? Okay, let's go to film. So again, I'm saying it every time, so y'all don't forget. These are numbers from those who responded to our survey. If you make more money, please come and talk to me. I want to work with you. These are freelance members who secure these projects on their own. So we're not talking about corporate music supervisors who work for film companies. These are fees that independent music supervisors receive. Okay? The average film budget, according to those in our sample, was $9.7 million. The minimum was an $80,000 budgeted movie, and the max was $70 million. That's important. The average fee was $20,000, and technically, with the amount of hours that was reported to have been to finish the film, the number is $38.18 per hour. Next slide, please.
Well, sorry.
Jojo had to stop me. Go ahead.
I just want to speak on that because I was on the other side. I just joined Sony a year and a half ago, and I was that person. And that's totally true. And you should also just mention that. I would mention that, like I said earlier, films could go from it depends on when you get in. So every project is different. Sometimes you get in during post, so everyone knows what post is, right? So you get pre-production and then you get post. Sometimes you come in and it's post, and you're clean, and it's a cleanup job. 30% of our business was cleanup jobs, people who had their friends that were an A&R person at a record label that kind of knew music but really didn't know licensing, so that by the time when you got to the end of it, the budget was an exorbitant $2.5 million. In licensing fees of music that was in there. So then we would have to come in, put our hazmat suit on, and fucking clean it, and clean it up. And so, and get it in within the budget that, and that would be, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 3 weeks to a month or something like that, right? And then you just kind of bada bing, bada boom, you're out. Or you could be on an animation project, and that would be 2 to 4 years. And so, again, like you guys are saying, you could say that this was a problem just in general, that you never know when you're going to get your paycheck. And with supervisors, the way that you get paid is there are triggers as well. It's when you first start the project, and usually it depends. It's either when you first start your project, and then does everyone know what spotting is? When you spot the movie with your director, and you kind of say, okay, this is where the music should go for score or for a song or whatever. So then you get your second trigger there, and the third trigger is when you final mix the movie, and that's towards the end of the 3 weeks to 4-year process, and then your fourth payment, which is the last payment, which is after you deliver all of your stuff. And so, and then, you know, as a supervisor from before on films, we had staff too. At Format, we had, you know, assistants and coordinators and whatnot, but, you know, it was a little different makeup because there was 4 or 5 of us, and we would all kind of pull our money together to like get coordinators and assistants. But again, it's the same problem. It's that we had to pay for the building, we had to pay for the staff, we had to pay for everything else. So I just wanted to mention all that. Those are interesting numbers,
and
though.
what was so this is $38 an hour. What was the average on television? Was it similar or 35?
Yeah. What she said. Next slide.
Also,
Oh.
and it should be said, you know, they literally are still sending checks. Like it's not like, hey, you can just pay us like a direct deposit, like, which goes way fast. It's literally checks, which I feel like could be the first start to getting paid faster.
And can I just say, I have Stripe, so I send electronic invoices that they can pay any way they want to. They still send checks.
But that makes me happy when the postal worker comes.
Don't take that away.
Don't
Go
take that
USPS.
happiness from me.
Okay. So these are averages depending on the budget. But we're going to talk about why that's kind of irrelevant. But 6.6 thousand for films less than $1 million. And I'll just say, if you Google all this stuff, the fees are so much higher. I'm like, I like their reality versus this one. 10.9 thousand if it's a film budgeted between 1 and 5 million, 6 to 10 million, 15.3, and then 10 million plus. I know it didn't say that, but everything above that, this was the average was 62,000. So something to kind of go with all of the freelance work that we've been speaking about. There's no benefits available. As Manish said, these are independent contractor relationships. We don't get benefits. We're a guild, we're not a union. So nobody calls us and says, hey, can you fill out your what do they call? I don't even know what it's called anymore. Your
Time card?
No, the time card, but also when you get your medical insurance, you know, fill out the medical insurance paper. That's so cool. No, we don't have that. Yeah, so just the average of hours per week that you work on it, like he said, could be anywhere from 3 weeks to 4 years, which is just sad. And then we wanted to point out that 34.48% of music supervisors paid for additional personnel out of their own fees. So that means whatever our fee was, we also had to hire someone else, an hourly fee, to get work done to help us be able to finish the project that we already started on so we could get a new project and not use up all our time. And the last thing someone mentioned in the survey, it was just one person, but there used to be performance-based bumps for music supervisors, and that has been changing. So no matter how beautifully your film does at the theater, in the box office, nobody sends you an extra paper check when things go well. If you have points on a soundtrack, you do. But I've not seen it, and maybe you guys can speak to that, because that's the end of this little film section. You guys want to speak to performance-based bumps?
So the interesting thing about films now is, and we've all seen, there's the mid-budget range film is kind of dead. It's basically indie films, small indie films, and huge blockbuster films. Like, I think starting out, we were always doing these great $40 million comedies. Like, it was like the good middle spot. It's a good payday. But now what's happened is, with that mid-range movie budget gone, basically what that job that used to get X amount of dollars, that 2-hour movie has now become an 8-hour Amazon movie. And you're being paid significantly less to work on an 8-hour movie that used to be a 2-hour movie. And that's something that's, I don't know if it's really been acknowledged, but on our side of working, I mean, we've all been in the room where on these shows where they're like, yeah, it's great, we're making an 8-hour movie. And you kind of want to say, I'm not getting paid for an 8-hour movie. I'm getting paid, for 8, TV episodes. So
And
that's
8 hours of extra content and extra conversations and extra
which is, so that's the thing that's missing here, which is there's a whole demographic of movie budgets that have disappeared from the landscape.
Does anybody want to talk about the pitfall of thinking that your fee is going to be something based on the budget?
It's not true.
I wanted to bring it up since I promised everyone that we would talk about that misconception.
I mean, it can also, the numbers are very hard and fast. It's like, okay, that's how many the film budget is, but you can have something that is much more musically intense, and that can in turn dictate what you demand your fee should be. If you're doing a 4-year-long animated and there's going to be 100 songs in it, then you have room to have a very different conversation than if you're doing a 1.5 hour film that just needs an opening credit and an end title.
One quick thing just to add to what Manish was saying about the disappearance of those like $20 to $40 million films also is like, I think a lot of us got into this because we love those types of films, like all of Sony Picture Classics and Fox Searchlight, and now it's like A24 and Annapurna. It's like, those are all the dope films that we all love to work on, but it's like, there's so few of those now. And even the ones that are being made have really, really low budgets. It makes it's like, if you're going into it, as kind of we all do, to like work on those films, it's like, it's difficult from an economic perspective. Like all of us kind of have films that we're very fortunate to work on, or TV shows that are like incredible creative projects, but we all kind of have to balance it out with projects that we take on, not just because it's a job or a paycheck, but like they're not all like those dream gigs. It's like another consideration.
We have about 10 minutes. 12. So I'm going to get through this last one and then we'll kind of open it up. Mixed media fees. So this is closer to what I do, even though most of the sample that responded to this works specifically in ads and promos, trailers, those types of things. I do short films, web series, digital campaigns, smaller things because they pay immediately. They have a very short shelf life. So they call me, they're working on something, I give them what they need, they pay me. It happens quickly, and some of them pay electronically.
Wait, how quick is quick?
I just did a Toyota campaign, which was let me first say, Toyota campaign on television would have paid me way more money than what I got paid. But, they have these lifestyle ads now where they'll have a talent talking to someone and then they're driving in a Toyota and they're like, yeah, we're going down the street. But there keeps being pictures of Toyota because it's really a Toyota ad and not just two people hanging out. So these types of kind of lifestyle campaigns, they pay very quickly. So I think it might have happened 4 weeks ago. She called me. These smaller digital production content companies, which there are also a ton of now, and they don't know much about music, especially urban music. And so they'll just say, we got this urban campaign. And we want a certain sound, which basically means please call your people because we don't know who to contact. And so, right, they want Kendrick Lamar, but their budget is Johnny Unknown, And so they'll call me, 2 weeks, they'll say, we're gonna go shoot it next week. And I'll say, fine, what's the budget? They'll give me the budget and I'll send them a playlist just as if I was working on an episodic, and say, according to this treatment you sent me, this is what we can do. And they basically find out if they like the playlist, they'll pick songs or whatever. And because it's such a short shelf life, I'll just say, hey, this is a fee. And they'll say, yeah, fine, let me know when it's done. You know, and so I don't have to go back and forth and argue and talk about different timings and all this stuff, which you have to do with TV and film. It's immediate. And then they've cut it. They send me an unlisted YouTube link that it's in. I send my confirmation of use with this 30 seconds or the 1 minute because it's short and I don't have to talk about a script. Help us, Lord. So, and then we're done. After it's unlisted, it's online almost, you know, like I said, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And I've spent only 2 or 3 hours and I make hundreds of dollars because these digital content production companies, they work quickly. They have, like this specific project has like 10 different videos that they're gonna do. So even though I did the first one, I know that they're doing the same type of video 10 times. And so they're just gonna pay me to do the whole thing. And then I know who is willing to accept that $250 or whatever that low fee was gonna be. And I can just keep sending them playlists that way. So it's a very short thing. Okay, let's get to mixed media fees. So these are freelance members who work in ad and branding campaigns, video games, trailers, and promos. The flat fee average is $3,000. The average project budget range is $15,000 to $35,000. I think this is low in terms of the project, but because these campaigns, just think about it, there's such varied types of content. I think that's why we may have a bit of a problem with the project budget range. But based on the rates, the fees are $100 per hour. Because again, short timing, short work, quick fees, they need things really quickly, and you're not mulling over it. So that's cool. So the other cool thing about mixed media is they have cooler ways to get paid. As we talked about, generally you get half on the front end and half on the back end when you're done. With these, you get a per hour rate or you just kind of get a flat rate on the front end. I charge a flat rate if they have multiple videos. If not, I charge per minute for like however long the digital campaign is. And I don't get paid on the front end, but I get all my monies because I know it's only a week or two until they make the decision. So I get all of that on the back end. Some people receive a percentage off of the sync fee. So they may have an hourly rate, but then they'll charge 8 or 10% of the sync fee. So in that model, people will say, oh, we have $30,000 for the music on this campaign. And you'll say, okay, you have to pay me $3,000. So it'll work like that. For the retainer, I had actually never heard of this. So if someone can speak to that to other people, raise your hand. But apparently, some people have monthly retainers that work with different companies for this. I need to ask my clients about this. I'm just saying. Per pool, so rates will vary, but depending on the type of music, so production music is cheaper and quicker and easier to find, or if it's artist or label songs that you have to kind of dig through your catalog and really have a lot of knowledge about, you'll charge a certain rate per pool, which is per song that you suggest to them. And if they actually choose the song to be in the campaign, you get a certain fee for that. Oh, yes.
What's the perception from the label artists, people that are pitching you? Like, what's the perception of these types of uses? You know what I mean? And when you say low fee, I mean, it is a minute, and they are short. But do they say like?
It's a low fee, but they know I'm going to call them regularly. You know, right. Everybody's waiting for that big movie or that big TV show placement. But because you have micro licensing now on YouTube, people are starting to see, oh, I need to open that up. Like, I need to be open to this little bit of money that trickles in. It's like a rain, you know what I mean? So they don't like it. And especially, I came from CBS. So I used to be the girl that was calling about $10,000. And now I'm calling about $250. And they're like, oh, hi. But I call more often now. So that's important. So they don't like it, but they have to be open to it, especially with new artists, indie artists and stuff like that. Emerging artists and stuff. They have to be open. So.
And do they, like, is there a negotiation where, like, do they ask to have, like, a Chiron on there to say, hey,
So
this is an artist that, you know what I mean? Like,
I think because I tell them it's ad specific, they don't want to have a conflict of whatever sponsorship would be with the artists. But that's what I think. But I've not been asked to Chiron something. I've been asked for Chiron when I worked at CBS. But with these little small digital campaigns, they're like, whatever, send the check. You know.
I was just going to kind of add to some context to some of the numbers that we're seeing, particularly for this mixed media stuff. Everyone kind of operates very differently in the freelance world, and a lot of times the way that you set up your numbers and your rates or your retainers, and any of that really is contingent on the type of media, whether it's for an ad campaign, whether this is part of something that you're doing for a game, whether this is for TV promos or trailers or other kind of teasers and things along that lines. It really depends on what the project is and what they are looking for, because they all have very unique kinds of needs. So if they're saying, hey, we just need some ideas for this one spot, then you might be more inclined to say, okay, I'll charge you my hourly rate. It's going to be a minimum of X number of hours, and we'll just keep going at that until we get it done. Or there might be a cap, or it might be, here's my flat fee just to get started. That's going to involve several different pulls of playlists. If you need any more after I do 3 different rounds, that's going to be an extra X number of dollars. It really depends on the timeline, the needs, the media, and what that may all entail. Because you could be doing one quick poll of here's 20 Q ideas for this one spot, or they might want you to work on an entire campaign. And that's a much larger commitment. So there's a lot of variance in these kinds of territories.
I don't know if she is here. Annalisa Phillip, are you here? Thank you so much. Guys, she put together the actual survey that went out. We are creative
Awesome.
people.
Thank you.
And we know what we want to be paid, but we don't know how to ask others of us what to ask. She helped put it together, and really this whole panel would not be possible without her. So thank you, Annalisa. We really appreciate it. This is the first time I'm even seeing her. Everything has been on email. So thank you. I just want to encourage everyone who is in the Guild of Music Supervisors next year when we do this, please respond to the survey. It is anonymous, and also share it with other colleagues. We want to be able to get as many people in the sample next time as possible so we can continue to compare year after year what the numbers are. That's it. I'm sorry, guys. We're out of time.